Yes, hello everyone. Nice to see you and welcome here. Today I'm going to talk about agile principles over practices. This is something that I've seen being becoming a more and more acute thing to address in the agile community. And I think that the more we work with methods or practices, the more the principles actually will become important. So let's jump in. I'll present myself in a couple of slides. So, have you ever heard this? Like, this will never work here because we have this and this problem. Or this is one thing that I've heard people say, sorry, our board doesn't look anything like the other team's board. Is that a problem? Or this, I spent a lot of time trying to get the same prioritization model across all teams of departments. Scrum, isn't that like 2017 or 27 even? We're way beyond that. We're mega agile, my friend. Yeah, agile, that basically was what we did before. It's just new names for the same thing. Or even this, I actually heard this exact quote. No, no, no. In safe, you can only have one release train engineer. You want to be two. That doesn't work really. Well, I'm here to preach freedom. Freedom from the joke of another agile methodology, freedom from the oppression of meaningless rituals, and freedom from the slavery of following stupid rules. But still know what you're doing. Because, as Obama once said, it's not cool not knowing what you talk about. This that I will teach you now is a particular important place to know about when you try to scale things up, because it can easily get you can easily end up in optimizing the wrong thing if you scale up things that are not rooted in good agile practices, good agile principles. So that's why I've come to focus on principles over the practices that we're doing. But what were those principles again? Maybe it's time to repeat them, right? Before we do that, I'm Marcus. I worked as a developer for a very long time and a consultant and mostly an agile coach. As I said, I've been doing that for a very long time. Most of the things that I've is around lean or agile, and foremost in the IT space, but even also in other places as well. When I'm not doing that, I care about my family, I care about my instrument, the euphonium, and the church that I belong to, which is called the Salvation Army. I'm employed at a company called Skling, a data engineering as a service company, where I have really nice coworkers, and here's one of them. These are the two best books I've written on Kanban. And some of the content in these books will be presented during this presentation. So you might skip a chapter or two in them. So, practice. I actually had to look it up in Swedish. I didn't know what it was called in Swedish. If there's any Swedish speaking people here, it's called a praxis. So that's a well-known way of doing things, what we're doing and how we're doing it, right? And a principle is more of a thought or a mindset, why we are doing something. Our industry talks a lot about practices. We look for best practices and we want to follow best practices, and we can even get certifications that we're following a certain practice, but we rarely talk about the principles. It is if we just want to know about the what but don't have time to care about the why. uh, the question is though, is that what even a solution for the problem that I have in my situation? Speaking about when you forget to follow the principles is when you end up in discussions like these. These are now actually pretty old. 4 or 5 years, we could see in Forbes, Stephen Denning talk about fake agile. And I've seen a lot of blog posts talking about that agile is dead. Agile is not dead. However, some of the agile practices that we are doing now is way outdated, so maybe we should start with something new. I also seen talks called something like this: no frameworks, take agile back. That feels like the agile way of approaching this, a little bit of a revolution, right? Uh, all of these things actually stems from us not understanding the principles, but rather just doing the practices. So let me show you a little framework that is not related to Agile at all, actually, but that is really good to know that we are applying the right type of solution to the problem that we have. This is a Welsh man called David Snowden, and he has invented a framework, a sense-making framework for just that, understanding the correct solution to a certain problem. Since it's Wales, this is pronounced Cynefin, I think. Any Welsh people will probably hit me for that pronunciation, but okay, I'm gonna say Cynefin. And it has 4 domains. Very important to Mr. Snowden that this is not a 4-fielder, so it's drawn like this. And there's actually 5 domains. I'll tell you about the one in the middle at the end. So the first domain is where we have a clear type of problem. It's the type like if this, then that kind of problem. So the car stops and you can see that you don't have any gas in it or that the battery is drained. Easy, I charge the batteries. Or in my case, I know nothing about cars, so if I pop the hood of the car, the only thing I could fix was a really big on-off switch in off position. I could fix that. So we could absolutely have a best practice for how to solve a certain problem. If we move up here, we end up in the complicated domain. So in this domain, rather than to just sense, categorize, and respond as we did in the clear domain, here we need to do some kind of analyzing. So this would be where you don't see really, there's gas in the car, but it still doesn't really start. So someone needs to make some kind of analyzing of what the problem is. Maybe a car mechanic, you wouldn't want to ask me, remember, on-off switch. So the car mechanic can say, I see the engine is broken, and that we know how to do that. But interestingly enough, there might be many ways of solving that problem. Maybe it's there are other ways to fix that problem than to just fix the start engine. Maybe it's just a cable, or maybe you can bypass it somehow just to get to the workshop. So there's no one best practice, but there's maybe a bunch of good practices instead. Moving on to the left here, we end up in the complex domain. And this is where cause and effect is only correlatable, inventing words here, in hindsight. We could understand how it happened when we look back. So imagine that you're driving your car and you end up in a very complicated traffic situation, almost an accident. After, you could say, oh, it was really good. First, I braked. I stepped on the brake and then I steered to the left, but that was wrong. So I steered back to the right and then I came in. And when she stepped in front, I could then, and that could be something that you could describe, but no one would have been able to describe that beforehand. This is how you're going to do it. First brake, then no. You had to do that while you were in it. So it's easier here to try something, see if it worked, and then respond with an action. So an emergent practice. The last domain is called chaotic. Here's where cause and effect will resolve itself, but not always to your advantage. And the only important thing here is to do something, see if anything happened, and then respond. So here's novel practice, like I jumped out of the window and that worked. And the last one is what's usually called the disorder, now called confusion. And this is where we don't really know which domain we are in. That's not uncommon, actually. So which domain is software development typically done in? Let's do a little thought experiment. This is a real picture, by the way. If you have a hard time staying awake at night, if you think about this. So let's imagine that you have been working with a project for 1 year, and when you come to the office in the morning, it looks like this. So everything that you have done is now gone. Nothing is left. You didn't store anything in the cloud. Everything was on computers that are wrecked. So obviously the company says, well, that was really sad. Can you do it again? And you do it again. If it took 1 year the first time, how long will you spend the second time? Most people guess half the time, or at least less. And then there's always a wise ass in the back that say it will take an equal amount of time because they have changed their mind, which only makes my point. I'll get back to that. So it will take considerably less. Why? What were you doing all the rest of the time? Well, you were learning. You were trying things, you were figuring out, you were doing the wrong thing and then realized that, oh, that didn't work and go back. Or you were like, oh, how on earth are we gonna do this? And thought for a day and then realized, oh, that was the wrong question and did something else. Here's the thing that is really scary, I think. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that after those 6 months, the same thing happens again and you get to do it again. Will it now be faster or slower? Typically faster, because we are still learning. So I'm saying that the things that we do is complicated or complex. So there are no best practices and there might be good practices, but actually sometimes the things that we are doing is not really a practice that someone else has done. So we need maybe emergent practices. But what do? Well, we install Jira, or we implement SAFe, or we follow the Spotify model, because then we know that this will be great. So we are applying good practices as if we were in the clear domain when we're actually in the complicated and complex domain. I mean, nothing wrong with Jira or SAFe or the Spotify model, but do you really have that problem, right? How would we even know if we were better? That's a question that I've been asking a lot and very seldom get an answer, right? Sometimes I get the answer, that depends who among us you ask. Isn't that more important that we know where we're going rather than that we're all working in the same way? A couple of years back, I had a revelation. I realized that there's a difference between manufacturing and then development. Develop means that we're creating something new, probably never done before, at least not in this context. And typically we only create one of it. Manufacturing means that we're creating many of a similar thing. So we're creating many phones, for example, and we want them to be exactly the same and follow exactly the same procedure. It's a little bit like thinking about a researcher, right? You wouldn't ask a researcher how far he's come. You wouldn't ask a researcher how long it will take until he's come up with this new vaccine. You could, but the answer would probably be very vague. However, how long will it take to make one more of these that you made 10 millions of already? That's an easy answer, right? Typically, it's also something that you will respond within seconds. What we are doing is software development for the most part. That's a very different thing than software manufacturing. So let's use the right type of thinking, the right type of problem solving, and the right type of mindset for solving development issues. And that was exactly what the beard of white middle-aged men did. The Council of Bearded White Middle-aged Men did back in 2001. They wrote this amazing document called the Agile Manifesto. So and then, as I said, that was like 2001, so it's really, really old. But someone made an updated version that looks like this called Modern Agile. Really good, actually, modernagile.org. So that's a good place to start. And with that, I'm done. Thank you. Good. Have a nice evening. No, just kidding. Let's see. What does the Agile Manifesto say? Well, I'm going to go back here. So it says, we are uncovering better ways. They didn't change that. They met 15 years after they wrote it, and they didn't change that. We are still uncovering better ways to develop software. This document is about software development, has nothing to do with Agile HR. That's another thing. And by doing this, we have come to prioritize the things on the left over the things on the right. Not that the things on the right are needless or bad, but we prioritize the things on the left more. We prioritize to work with individuals and interaction closely together rather than following certain processes and tools. We prioritized and see the value that we deliver as working software rather than having comprehensive documentation. Documentation is a copy of how the code works. It's not the truth. The code is the truth. Working software is the real value that we're supplying. We prioritize to have collaborations with real customers. I've been in this industry for since 98. I've rarely got to meet a real customer. Sometimes I met the product owner. They are nice people, but not the customer. We prioritize to respond to change rather than following a plan. All right. But if you squint your eyes and look at this, it would be really hard for me to say, okay, go and do that. Because it's totally lacking any description on how. And if you ever met a guy like me, an agile coach, we will talk a lot about, you have to shift your mindset, man, and think like this instead. It's a totally different way of seeing things. Yeah, stop to think about activities and shift to outcomes. Do not think about features, but rather on the impact that you're creating. Shift your mindset from project to product, from budget to I got overexcited. I don't want to start a war here. But that's actually true. All of these are really true, but it's also very, very hard to do. Shift the mindset of an entire organization. How on earth are you going to do that? So now I have a problem here, because I'm saying that I want you to follow these principles and let them create your practices. But that will be impossible. And actually, one of the reasons that tools like SAFe and Scrum and XP are being used so much, because they give us some practices and it's easy to follow them. But if you start with only the practices, you don't forget about the principles. So we're a little bit in a catch-22 here on how to understand this. Also, the practices deepen our understanding of the principles, but the principles also feed back into our practices. So it's like a loop here. So what I wanted to do is to give you a couple of practices to understand the principles. Yes, I'm going full Mr. Miyagi on you. Wax on, wax off, you learn, then the crane kick, okay? So here we go. I'm going to give you 4 very simple practices. The first one is to start where you are. Then visualize your work. Then limit work in process. And finally, help work to flow. Let's examine them in detail. Start where you are. That sounds like a really stupid thing to say. Let me tell you a joke. Very good way of starting a joke, right? Now we're gonna laugh. All right. So a man walks up to a taxi driver in London and he says, "How do I get from here to Piccadilly Circus?" And the cabbie says, "Well, that's really hard. I wouldn't start from here." Pausing for virtual laughter. Well, that's stupid, right? I am here. I want to get from here to where I am next. But what I've seen in our industry is that we do exactly that. Before you start with Agile, you need to fix your budget process. Before you start with Agile, you need to train all your people in these practices from Scrum or SAFe or XP. Before you start with Agile, everyone needs new roles and stuff like that. That's stupid. I don't believe that's a good thing. I don't believe that a revolution is the way to go. Sometimes that might be needed because you need to shake things up, but typically an evolutionary approach is much, much better. And to be honest, I wouldn't dare to stand here and suggest things to you if I thought that I knew exactly what you were going to do. No, part of this is actually to learn. We are uncovering better ways. So when I'm doing this, when I think about start where you are, that's actually gives me as a consultant confidence to like, okay, we're not going to change much. We're going to start exactly where we are and make every day a little bit better than before. So start where you are. Don't change anything. Second thing, make whatever you are doing right now visual. And that could be anything. Back in the old days, we created boards on the wall, which is still a really good way of doing it. Actually, this is a backlog that we had that was very visual at one client, where we could see things like what's going on, where are we working. Here be dragons. This is a problem. Here's where we're working right now, etc. And by having this backlog, we could actually bring people into the room, and they could tell us how we were doing and if we were working the right way. How could they do that? That was already present. We used Jira. All of these things were in Jira. But Jira is an information fridge. This is an information radiator. It's in your face, showing you what's going on right now. Think about the standard prototypical Kanban board. We're going to see one in action pretty soon. And you could start to think like, why do I even write a card? Why do I create a Jira ticket? Well, that work that happens in your head needs to get out of your head and onto something physical that I can see and touch, because otherwise it's very hard to talk about. If you're working when building phones, you could see a big pile of phones being in front of the packaging station, and you would understand that that would be a problem. If we didn't use tools like Jira that showed us that we have 600 tickets in ready for testing and one tester that doesn't get anything done, that would not been shown. It's very easy to miss that. So don't change anything. Visualize your work, make it visible somehow. And thirdly, limit work in process. Now, here's the secret sauce. That means that we're going to do fewer things. And if this were in person, I would now play a game, but I will not torture you. So I'll instead show you a little movie here. So we have 3 projects that I want you to try. You can try this at home with your spouse. They will love it, I promise you. Uh, First, I want you to write in a nice column A through J with a blue pen. Secondly, Roman numbers 1, 2, whatever X is called in Roman, with the red pen. And thirdly, with a black pen 1 to 10. Here's the thing though, all of these projects are important. They are equally important. So I want you to do it row by row so that we work on all projects at the same time, because we need to do a lot of work done. So it will look something like this when you do it. So you have to switch pen there, and you see that we get progress in all projects. Wonderful, wonderful. And yeah, at this point, it gets a little bit boring, not to speak about the 600 slides that I created to do this animation. But okay, so at the end, it looks a little bit like this. And we can see that the total time was 1:30, which also was when this project was finished. This project was finished just a couple of seconds before, and a little bit early, this first project was finished. So that took 1:24. Here's the thing, I was lying, sorry, because it was not really like that. What I wanted you to do is to focus on the most important project, and that's the blue project. That is like business critical. We need to get that down. So first do that, then switch over to the second project, which is important, but not at all as important as the blue one. And thirdly, do the black project, which was mostly for my amusement. So in that case, it will look something like this. Come on. If this doesn't work, we'll switch forward. Yeah, here we go. So now the blue project got finished, and then the red project, and then the switch pen to the black project, and done. So these are the numbers now. Whoa. Oh, ho, ho. What happened? It took 1:30 first and 34 seconds in the second thing. Let's agree that the same amount of work has been done. And it was done in a similar way. We didn't change anything. You're still using a blue pen, still using a red pen, still using my hands, but it was a third of the time. Where on earth did all that time go? What happened? Well, you might think that it's because you have to switch pen, but actually it's in here. When you do this, if you try it on a board, you will notice that around the middle part of the exercise here, it gets really hard to keep track on where you are. And I've never seen anyone do this without struggling to remember if G came after or before F, for example. So it's about context switching. Humans are really bad at that. Computers are great at that, but humans are really bad at that. So that's quite an improvement without changing how we work, but just doing one thing at a time. We actually cut this in a third. However, that's not the best part. This is the best part. Remember that blue business critical project? That now was done in 12 seconds rather than 1 and 24, because we were punishing the blue project by doing other projects at the same time. Now, when we focused on that, we were in the zone. We could just write it down like that, and we got it done much faster. So again, doing it in the same way, using the same tools, but we ended up in this situation. There's a little bit more subtle thing here. We have opportunities for something that we didn't have in the first project in the second project. Let me show you. Something happens here and here. What happens here? Well, if I, and I've done this sometimes, was really mean and asked you when you got halfway through to add another project, can you now with another black pen write 10 to 1, for example? In the first round, you would have 3 projects that was half done. In the second round, the first one would have been done, and the second one would have been here, and you could tell me, like, if you give me 6 seconds more, I'll finish this, and then you can select if this project is the most important to do, or if another project is more important to do. That opportunity to be able to reprioritize and select, that's what's known as business agility. So now we're given the business opportunity to select again and prioritize again that they didn't have before. Okay, so don't change anything. Make your work visual. Did you, by the way, see the visual pen thing that we wrote there? I didn't write it in Excel. And thirdly, make a limit. At this point, we haven't changed anything. We just changed how many things we are doing at the same time, but we are doing them in the same way. That's a pretty big change, by the way. So I'm exaggerating, but you can think about it as a good change management tip, by the way. Don't change anything, my friends. These are not the changes you need to see. Now, the fourth part is where we're going to change everything. Now we're going to change everything we do and have ever done ever, but in very small steps. And before I can explain what flow is, I need to tell you a little story here, which is based on a book called This is Lean by Niklas Modig and Per Åhlström. A couple of years back, I woke up one morning and had a severe toothache. So I went to the dentist and they say, "Oh, sorry, my friend, but one of your root canals has gone bad. You need to redo it." Oh, sweet Lord. Well, do it then, I said. And they say, not so easy, my friend. That's hard. Please call Torbjörn. Now, in Stockholm, if someone asks you to call a particular dentist, that's problems, because that means that there are only one person that can do this job. So I called Torbjörn and he said, "Okay, great. I can do this. This is what I specialize in. So let's see." Obviously, I didn't talk to Torbjörn. I talked to his secretary. And I heard this, and then she said, "Oh yeah, here, like 5th of May. How does that sound?" That sounded horrible because this was in the beginning of February. Yes, I got to wait 3 months before they fixed my tooth. So I was obviously not happy with that, but what could I do? So I went to that place, and when I went there, I came a little bit early. I didn't want to miss my time. So I sat down in the reception. I asked them in the reception about that. You had 3 months waiting time? And they looked at me super proudly and they said, "Yes, soon, my friend, it will be 4." They were packing the schedule as much as possible to ensure that Torbjörn always was busy. So how do you do that? Well, you have a long queue in front of Torbjörn so that if someone cannot come, he can continue on the next thing, on the next thing, on the next thing. This is where we try to optimize the utilization of the resources. Down here, we are optimizing for the flow of value. And a good example of that would be the fire department. What does the fire department do when they are not putting out fires? Yes, exactly. They sit around and do nothing. I once told this joke with a fireman in the audience. If you're going to make someone angry, don't do that with a fireman. So, no, they are doing other lower prioritized work. So, like training, fixing their equipment, and maybe doing preventive work, even. Here's the thing though, we have many more firemen than is needed to put out all the fires that's happening right now. Why? Why do we pay them to sit around doing nothing? Just a joke, Mr. Fireman, just a joke. Well, we don't want to call them and say like, "Hey, there's a fire, come," and they go, "Yeah, how about tomorrow at 12? Will that work for you?" No, they need to be able to go now. So how do you solve that problem? Well, you have an overcapacity of people so that they can always go. In the fire department, they actually have a very intricate system to cover for each other within the stations as well. So that's when you're optimizing for the flow of value and paying by having people sitting around doing nothing. Here you optimize for Torbjörn being busy all the time. Let's fill this 4 field out. This is the desert. No one has nothing to do and nothing gets done. I think I worked there once. And this part here is nirvana. Everyone is fully utilized by only doing valuable work. I haven't worked there. So this is lean. How could you describe lean now? Well, lean is a business strategy that aims to take you from here to nirvana, going via flow of value for a client. So whatever you can do to improve flow, you could go the other round way as well to resource utilization, but that's proven very hard. I mean, it's like Soviet plan economy, for example. Also, if you have fully utilized the resource, that resource cannot take time to learn anything, cannot take time to be kind to the customers, and so on. They have to be busy all the time. Here, we're focusing on the flow of value from a customer perspective, just like user stories in Agile. And that's my recipe. These are practices that will guide you towards understanding the principles better and towards making your world better and making your process better as well. By the way, this is called the Kanban method. If you're interested in that, let's try it in real life. I'm going to use some of these simple tools and see how they can guide us in understanding and improving situations better. Now, this will be a little bit ridiculous because I will talk with myself, but okay, let's do that. Pausing for virtual laughter again. Actually, I have some coffee. Okay, so how much value is being delivered here? Well, no value. They are stuck. This is a delivery service, let's say, and all of these things are not getting delivered. Okay, so typically here, I've actually shown this to hundreds, if not thousands of people. And so I basically know how this is going to play out. So then I would ask, okay, how do you fix this problem? And you get all kind of creative answers like buying another donkey, increasing the shackles length so that the donkey is further forward, having 4 wheels. All of these ideas are really good. Some of them are cruel, but that they are all expensive. What's the cheapest way of fixing this? Well, obviously offload some of these. Great. Which one? What? Yeah, if you're going to offload, if you're going to limit work in process, which one should you offload? Well, I don't know. Well, we probably should know, right? Because if we offload that one, that doesn't make such a big difference, but it happens also to be one of the more valuable things on the trolley. This one is a good candidate because that would make a huge difference, but maybe that's hard to offload. So now we need to think about what is the value that we're creating here. Do we want to deliver many things that are light or a few things that are heavy? or are they prioritized by urgency or by some kind of value? Okay, we offload a couple. How many? Or let me ask you this: who knows how many we should offload? Well, the donkey does. The donkey knows. If you offload one, he would go like, yeah, thank you a lot. I'm now on the ground, but every step I take, I float through the air. I don't want to do that. And see that downhill thing over there? That will be a problem, I promise you. So we should offload quite a lot actually to get to a sustainable pace. So something where the donkey will actually be able to do this for a long period of time. I lived in a country where I've seen this happen. Do you know how they solved the problem? They put bags on the donkey. Pausing for virtual sigh. Yeah, it's not so funny now, right? That's horrible. That's cruelty to animals. I sure hope that we don't do that to people. We do. We do. And in fact, Jira is a way to do that because you can put stuff in someone else's backlog. And then this is something that you haven't done. I hate the word backlog, by the way. This is something that you haven't done. This is something that you haven't done. And what happens then? People burn out. I'm one of them. I was gone for about 1.5 years from burnout. And so limiting working process to a sustainable pace is the way to go, and the sustainable pace is from the viewpoint of the person doing the work. So what did we do here? We started where we were. This is the problem. Let's solve it. We made our work visual. In this case, it was super easy because we could see it. We limit work in process in order to help value to flow to customer. The 4 practices in action. Let's take another example. I'm going to skip ahead here. Not bashing on SAFe, not bashing on Scrum, and not bashing on the concept that fail fast is for suckers. It's about learning fast. But let's see the prototypical Kanban board and see what this done. This is a good start. We have now made our work visual. I kind of like this Kanban board. There's only 2 problems with it. I don't really like to do, and done is not a good name either. And then I have some problems with doing. So let's see how we can make this better. Well, done. What does done mean in software development? That's when you take out a feature. Until that point, it's still something that you need to maintain and take care of. So done is not really a good name. What would happen if we change that name to measure? Measure what? Well, measure the impact, of course. We did this thing. This card here was done for a reason. How would we know if we even got to that point? But hold on, if you're going to call that measure, then we need to decide. Yes, exactly. You need to decide over here what to measure before you start. That's a good thing. Let's do that. To do, as I said, I don't really like that either. We can improve. Let's call it next 6 instead. So these are the top 6 items that we want to do. And by the way, let's draw a line here. And when we get to that point, we ask for 3 more things. But come on, Marcus, the backlog is much, much bigger. Yes, I know. My record backlog that I've seen was 538 items long. We were 40 people working there for 2 years. We got to item 36 because there's always something new. So rather than having 538 items in a long row, which is impressive, to keep that prioritized, just pick the top 6. It's not that important that you do the most important thing. Doing something important, that's quite all right. And the rest could just be options. This is a very messy way of doing it. You should probably look at an impact map, for example. That would be a much better way of doing that. Then you would know what the value that you're gonna do, that you're gonna deliver, what the impact is before you start even. So now we have a limit on how many things that can be in the backlog. It can be 6, and we work from the top down. Very good way of organizing it. So we made our work visual. We started where we were. We made our work visual. We limit work in process. By the way, we didn't put a limit for the doing column, which would be idiotic, because then that could be overflowed. Now, if we put the limit in here, then if someone tries to put another card in here, we would ask, oh, hold on, we are already doing 3. Should we not stop doing one of those others, or should we do this afterwards? We're asking questions now to help the work of each item to flow faster. So if you are doing Agile without knowing really something about the principles, you stand a really great risk of optimizing the wrong things, optimizing the practices that might not lead you to improve. So the practices, they can vary over time. I'm sure that we will find something better than SAFe. I'm sure that we will find something better than Scrum, that, by the way, predates even Agile. So it's starting to get really old. It's a solution for a problem that we had in the 90s. Nothing wrong with Scrum, but maybe we should do something better now. And what I'm saying is that understanding the Agile principles and let them guide you to better practices will lead you to a better place. And with that, my presentation is over. Principles over practices, or what Agile really is all about. And I think, Maria, that we have a couple of minutes left for questions, if there are any.
Yes, and first of all, thank you for a very informative and storytelling webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will try to read out the questions, and you can answer as good as you can.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll try.
And I will start with this one. Are there any specific challenges when applying these principles in a remote or hybrid work environment?
Yes. So the thing is, you're referring to the principles that I've spoken about here. They are actually not that hard to apply in any environment, these principles, because they are so, these practices, these practices are so general. Like, but obviously the most obvious one is the visualize practice. So if we are spread out, which we nowadays normally are, that would be more of a challenge, because having something on the wall is not communicating the same thing. So what we're doing here is to find other tools. So in your particular setting, making the work visible, very hard for a Swedish person to say that, might have a very different solution than what I've shown here. So this is where tools like Jira actually becomes super useful, right? Seeing what's going on in each column right now, that becomes very important. However, what I'm mostly seeing is that Jira just becomes like a pit of despair with a lot of tickets that you never get to. So don't forget to have some kind of limit on how many things you are doing in there. Other than that, I have used these practices in remote teams with great success, because it's not really about where if you're sitting next to each other. I'm also gonna stick out my chin a little bit here and say that I think that work being in the room is just about always better, but in many workplaces where we are, that's not possible or not feasible anymore. So we just have to do the best of what we can, starting where we are. If half our team is not in the room, let's make it as good as possible for when they are not here.
Yeah, and I got a comment here that Miro is very good for making things visual.
Indeed. I mean, that's a very good point. Actually, I've been talking about Jira now because it's the most common tool. But in reality, the Jira comes also with a toll. It comes with, like, you need to follow workflows that are defined and stuff like that. A tool like Miro gives you total freedom. Like, it's just cards on a wall, and that could be a way to visualize your work as well. So thanks for pointing that out. Good point.
Okay, moving on. How can we maintain motivation and inspiration throughout the improvement process?
Mm. I think that applying these principles to the improvement process itself is a key here. So making sure that we know what we are improving, for example. I that's a really mean question that I'm asking sometimes. Like, if we were 100% better in a year, how would you know? And starting the project by answering that question, and like, this is what we're trying to do. We want the builds to be faster. That's what we're going to do now for 1 month. Or we want to be able to measure the value faster. What I've seen is like decreasing the scope of the feedback loop, increasing feedback speed. That is a key thing to get people engaged in this thing. And also what I think, which actually ties into what I've said here, is that not focusing so much on the actual practices, giving, for example, each team the empowerment to do whatever they want to do in order to reach the goal. Another question that I've been using a lot, which I think is touching that subject, is imagine that you get a user story or something, a project description to do, and you could ask this question: if we did something quite different from what's on this card, but reached the goal, would that be okay? And in a good product organization, I've seen that, yeah, of course. Just where the place that I'm working right now, someone asked us for a web application. We realized that we could build a command line tool that does the same thing within a week, and then we were done. So don't overcomplicate it, but that cannot be done if that's the real power of a development team. If you're just doing what people instruct you to, then you're doing like remote controlled programming. That's not really fun. And if you do instead doing software development and coming up with new things, that's when I've seen also people engaging in improving the process itself, because now it feels like, yeah, we are also in charge of the process.
Thank you. And before I move on to the last question here, I just want to say if there is anyone who hasn't sent me a question, feel free to do that now before it's too late. And you can do it in the chat. So the next one: how can these principles be effectively communicated to teams that are new to Agile?
Yes, exactly. I'm waiting for one question because there's one little gotcha here, but this is I'm going to bring it up now because this ties into that. I used these principles at the hospital in Indonesia. It had nothing to do with software, and we just followed these principles, these practices. That was all we did in order to help them improve the situation that they were in. I didn't even tell them that it was Agile until after the fact, because I've been working as an Agile coach since 2004, and I don't care if it's Agile. That's not, who cares? Have you ever bought something from a company just because they work with Agile? No, you buy things from a company because they do good things and they have nice support, or they have good, I don't know, good documentation even. So shifting your mindset there as well to what is the value that we're going to output, I think that's like the core change that you need to do. There's no real benefit of it being Agile or not. Between you and me, Agile is the best thing I've seen, but okay, so that it could be a good start. But starting here, making the work visual as it is, I went really fast now, but just by making the work visible on a wall in a workshop would actually make an enormous impact, just seeing all the work in front of you, and then starting to realize that, okay, so if we put a limit in here and all of those things, and starting to answer the questions like, if I limit the work, then I have to say no to other work. How should I do that? Etc. etc. So that's why I kind of like these practices, because they are so simple. You don't even have to tell them that it's all about Agile. I even did that on you. I mean, this is what we're seeing here is the Kanban method. That's what this is called. But who cares? I don't care. I've written 2 books on the topic. I don't care. You do whatever you want to make it work. These are good practices to get going and to deliver deliver value faster.
Great. You might be able to invent a new name for it.
Yes, exactly. And that's actually a really good point. Saying that we are working with a certain method, that is only important if you're selling that method. For the rest of us, we want to get work done. So we don't really care, right? But thank you, Maria, for bringing that up. This is actually where there becomes a little bit of a problem, because selling this to a company is very, very hard. Trust me, I've been trying to do that for 20 years. Selling SAFe is super easy, because you have a very well packaged product that is doing something very well defined, and there are rules and there are settings and there are document templates. What I'm giving you here is just a couple of ideas and then go. That's much harder to sell. So that's my my sad trombone moment, right? But for a small team, you can start with this tomorrow, or hey, the day is not over, you can start today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then, great. I got a lot of thank you messages to you, Marcus, for
Thank you.
a very good presentation. I did get a last question that said, were there any donkeys injured during making of this?
Yeah, no, the only donkey I might have injured was the one on the picture there, and I injured his pride, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't think so.
Great. Well, a lot of there's a next question, actually, a last question. Then we have to round up. How to apply in a regulated environment where value flow is restricted by external factors?
Yes, exactly. That's why I would not dare talk about this if I didn't realize that you should start where you are. So think about it like that. What are you doing today? Great. Make that work visual so that you can see that. Put in a work in process limit. And okay, so that's easy. And when you do demos like this, you always start like with 1 or 3 or something like that. Maybe if you have 160, okay, start with 160 then. And then just decide like we're not going to go over 160. And then every month we're going to back off with 2. And then once it starts to be painful, then we'll have to change something in the way that we work in order to make flow of value be faster. So start where you are is the answer to that. So I mean, obviously, I would love to have an answer to how to solve that in a regulated environment. But here's the truth: I don't know. I don't know. That is super scary, but that's the case. I don't know how to optimize your process. I can help you to get there, but I don't know where we end up. Which is, by the way, a very agile way of approaching this. So hey, finding a better way is the agile way, not having the better way.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you all for joining in, and hope to see you some other time. Thank
Indeed.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye bye.